At exactly 4:47 in the afternoon, Marcus Reed lay on his back beneath a silver Mercedes and did something that would end his life as he knew it. The concrete floor was cool against his shoulders. The shop smelled of oil and metal and the faint sweetness of brake fluid. His wire cutters trembled in his hand. For a second, just a second, he thought about sliding out from under the car and pretending he hadn't seen what he'd seen. Instead, he squeezed. The brake line snapped with a soft metallic pop. Fluid splashed across his fingers, warm and slick. He closed his eyes as it ran over his palms. Evidence, clear and shining. 60 feet away, in the customer lounge, Rachel Donovan, millionaire CEO, polished and composed, was signing her service receipt. In a few moments, she would walk out, press her key fob, and drive straight toward the highway. Marcus rolled out from under the car and wiped his hands on his coveralls. The stain only spread. He glanced up at the security camera in the corner of the service bay. He had worked at Premier Motors for 3 years. Never late, never careless, never the kind of man who would risk his job when he was already 3 months behind on rent. But he was the kind of man who had a 7-year-old daughter waiting at aftercare. The kind who counted insulin pens like they were gold bars. Rachel stepped through the glass doors. Her heels clicked on the polished showroom floor. She didn't look at him. Wealthy people rarely did. She unlocked the car and slid behind the wheel, phone pressed to her ear. Marcus stood beside the open toolbox. He could still run. Take Lily. Disappear before the footage was reviewed. Instead, he stayed. The engine started. The car rolled forward. 5 feet. 10. 15. Then Rachel pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. The Mercedes drifted into the decorative barrier at the edge of the lot with a dull, crumpling sound. It wasn't fast, it wasn't dramatic, but it was wrong. For 3 seconds, the showroom was silent. Then someone screamed. Rachel sat frozen behind the wheel, her breath coming hard. She stepped out slowly, shaken but standing. Her eyes found Marcus through the windshield. He was still there. Brake fluid on his hands, wire cutters in the open toolbox. Not running. Security grabbed him before he could speak, pushed his arms behind his back. Cold handcuffs closed around his wrists. Rachel walked toward him, pale and furious. "What did you do to my car?" she asked. Marcus met her eyes. "Calm now, steady. Check the master cylinder," he said quietly, "before you drive anything else." She stared at him like he'd spoken nonsense. "I'm calling my lawyer," she said. "You're going to prison." "I know," Marcus replied. He had known the moment he squeezed those cutters. As the patrol car door shut behind him, Marcus looked once more at the dealership. Rachel stood in the parking lot, arms crossed, watching him go. She believed he had tried to kill her. She had no idea he had just saved her life. The holding cell smelled like bleach and old regret. Marcus sat on the narrow metal bench, his coveralls still damp at the cuffs. The stain on his hands had faded to a dull gray, but he could still see it if he looked closely enough. It was 5:23 p.m. Lily would be waiting at aftercare, swinging her legs from the little plastic chair near the window. Mrs. Chen from downstairs was supposed to pick her up at 6. He had called her from the station phone and told her he was running late. He hadn't told her he might not be coming home at all. Detective Sarah Kovac entered the room carrying a thin folder and a recorder. She looked tired, like someone who had seen too many stories end badly. "Walk me through it," she said. Marcus told her everything. About the routine inspection. About sliding under the chassis and finding something that didn't belong. A secondary pressure valve installed near the master cylinder. Clean wiring. Careful work. Someone else tampered with it first, he said. "And your solution," she replied slowly, "was to cut the brake line yourself? To make it fail here in the parking lot, not on the highway." She wrote something down. Her pen moved carefully. "That's an interesting story. It's the truth. Security footage shows you under the car. Your tool cut the line. She crashes. That's attempted murder in Illinois. Then charge me." She studied him for a long moment. "You've got a daughter," she said. 7 years old. Type 1 diabetes. You're behind on rent. You've been asking your manager for overtime, and then a millionaire's car ends up in your bay." Marcus felt the weight of it. How it must look. "If I wanted money," he said quietly, "I would have let her die and sued the dealership for ignoring a reported defect. That's worth millions. What I did gets me prison." The room was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. "Check the master cylinder," he said again. "Please." At 6:15, Mrs. Chen walked Lily upstairs and warmed leftovers for dinner. At 8, she gave her the insulin injection the way Marcus had shown her. Her hands shook, but Lily was brave about it. "Daddy's just working late," Mrs. Chen said. By 10:47 p.m., Detective Kovacs returned. Her expression had changed. "We checked it," she said. Marcus looked up. "You were right. Someone installed a secondary failure device, sophisticated work, designed to activate under highway conditions." He closed his eyes for just a second. Not relief, just confirmation. "You cut the line before it could trigger," she continued. "You likely saved her life. So I can go home? You're not our primary suspect anymore, but whoever did this is still out there." Marcus stood slowly. "My daughter's waiting." He didn't ask about his job, he didn't ask about his reputation. He only thought about Lily, asleep with her, stuffed rabbit, and how close he had come to leaving her fatherless, whether by prison or by conscience. Outside, the night air felt cold and honest. Tomorrow, Rachel Donovan would learn the truth. Tonight, he just needed to get home. Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch when Marcus unlocked the apartment door a little after 11. She startled awake, pressing a hand to her chest. "Marcus, thank God, what happened?" "Long story," he said gently. "Thank you for staying." Lily's bedroom door was closed. A soft nightlight glowed under it. Marcus stood there for a moment before opening it quietly. She was curled on her side, one arm wrapped around her stuffed rabbit. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, small, fragile. The whole world contained in one narrow bed. Marcus checked her blood sugar, 147. Not perfect, but safe. He kissed her forehead and closed the door. In the kitchen, 3 eviction notices were still stuck to the refrigerator with magnets shaped like fruit. A medical bill sat folded on the counter. The numbers on it felt heavier than handcuffs. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Reed?" The voice was steady, controlled. "This is Rachel Donovan." He went still. "Miss Donovan." "I owe you an apology," she said. No hesitation. "The forensic mechanic confirmed what the detective told me. You saved my life, and I had you arrested." "It's fine." "It's not fine." There was a pause on the line, not awkward, just human. "I need to meet with you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. There's a coffee shop on Wells Street, Brood Awakening." Marcus looked at the eviction notices. "I lost my job today," he said quietly. "I can be anywhere." "You were fired?" "I cut your brake line on camera." Silence. "I'll speak to the dealership," she said. "I'll explain." "Don't." His voice came out sharper than he meant it to. "I don't want charity. You asked me to meet. I'll meet you, but I don't need your money." Another pause, longer this time. 8 o'clock, she said softly. After the call ended, Marcus stood alone in the kitchen. He had just turned down help from someone who could solve every financial problem in his life with a single signature. Lily would pay for that pride if he wasn't careful. In the morning, he walked her to school like always. She complained about math homework and asked for pancakes for dinner. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, studying his face. "I'm fine," he said. "I'm just tired." "You look worried." "That's my job." She hugged him before running inside. At 8 o'clock sharp, Marcus stepped into the coffee shop. Rachel Donovan was already there, sunglasses on, laptop open, looking like she hadn't slept either. This time she looked directly at him. "Thank you for coming," she said. Marcus sat down across from her. "You said you needed to meet." She closed her laptop. "I need your help." Marcus let out a quiet breath. "My help with what?" Rachel removed her sunglasses. Without them, she looked less like a headline and more like someone who hadn't slept. "With figuring out who tried to kill me." "That's a police job." "The police are investigating the brake system," she said. "They're focused on the dealership, but this is bigger than a mechanic's bay." She turned her laptop toward him. Financial spreadsheets filled the screen, columns of numbers, transfers, dates. "I run Donovan Industries," she said. "We're closing a $500 million acquisition this Friday. If I die before then, the deal collapses." Marcus studied the numbers, even though most of it meant nothing to him. Who benefits if the deal collapses? That's the question. She folded her hands. On paper, everyone wins. Off paper, I'm not so sure. He looked at her carefully. "You think someone inside your company did this?" "I think someone with money and access hired it done." The coffee shop hummed softly around them. Steam from the espresso machine rose in the corner. Outside, Chicago moved like nothing unusual had happened. "You found the sabotage," Rachel said. "You saw something no one else caught. I need someone who notices what doesn't belong. I'm a mechanic, Marcus said. You're observant, she replied, and you acted when it mattered. He almost laughed at that. Acting had cost him his job. I'm offering you $20,000, she said quietly. Temporary consultant. Help me find the truth. The number sat between them like something fragile. 20,000 meant rent caught up, insulin-covered, breathing room. Why me? He asked. Because you could have let me die, she said, and you didn't. Marcus thought about Lily at school, about eviction notices, about pride that didn't pay pharmacy bills. What would I have to do? Review internal access logs, expense records, travel patterns, tell me if anything feels wrong. He leaned back slowly. If this puts my daughter in danger. It won't, she said. He didn't fully believe her. Danger had a way of spreading. But drowning had a way of spreading too. When do we start? He asked. Rachel closed the laptop. Now. And just like that, the mechanic who had cut a brake line to save a stranger stepped into a glass tower downtown, carrying nothing but a notebook and the quiet hope that he wasn't about to make another mistake. Donovan Industries sat high above the river, all glass and clean lines. Marcus felt out of place the moment the elevator doors opened onto the 23rd floor. Rachel's office looked out over Chicago like it owned it. The desk alone was bigger than his kitchen table. She introduced him to her assistant, Julie, then began listing names. Keith Ashford, my COO. We started the company together 8 years ago. He's been with me from the beginning. There was something careful in the way she said it. Linda Wu, CFO. Brilliant, cautious. She opposed the acquisition at first. Why'd she change her mind? Marcus asked. After reviewing projections Keith provided. He made a note. They met the executives one by one. Keith was confident and smooth, offering full cooperation without hesitation. Linda was precise and analytical. David from engineering spoke quickly about security concerns. Simone from operations looked tired but loyal. Everyone seemed reasonable. That worried Marcus. By late afternoon, his notebook was filled with arrows and circles, names connected by dates and transfers. It reminded him of tracing a faulty wire in an engine. The problem was never where you first saw the smoke. At 5, his phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen. Lily's blood sugar ran high after dinner, she said. I gave a correction dose like you showed me, but I'm nervous. You did fine, he told her. I'll be home soon. Rachel watched him hang up. She's 7, she asked. Yes, that must be hard. You do what you have to do. That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his notes spread out beside the eviction notices. Patterns began to form. Keith had traveled to Indianapolis several times in the past 2 months. Large company payments had gone to a consulting firm with no real address. Linda had hired fraud investigators 3 months ago. Someone had been looking for something. Marcus's phone rang again. Detective Kovac. Todd Vickers disappeared, she said. Cleared out his apartment. Looks like he ran. Marcus felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Then he wasn't working alone, he said. That's what I'm afraid of. After the call, Marcus locked the door and sat in the quiet kitchen. Someone had tried to kill Rachel. Someone had just run, and Marcus had stepped directly into the middle of it. In Lily's room, he could hear her breathing softly. He stared at the page where he had circled one name twice. Keith Ashford. He didn't have proof. Not yet, but something didn't fit. And Marcus had learned a long time ago to trust that feeling. Marcus found the connection just after dawn. Linda Wu had hired a fraud investigation firm 3 months earlier. 2 weeks after that, Keith had begun traveling quietly to Indianapolis. Each trip lined up with large transfers to a company that barely existed on paper. It wasn't proof, but it was a direction. He called Rachel before walking Lily to school. I think Linda found something, he said, and I think it had to do with Keith. There was a pause on the line. Come to the office. He dropped Lily off with an extra hug that morning. She noticed. Daddy, why do you look like you forgot something? Just thinking too hard, he said. On the train downtown, his phone rang from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm, almost polite. You need to stop what you're doing, Mr. Reed. Marcus gripped the rail. Who is this? Someone who doesn't want to hurt your daughter, but will. The words didn't shout. They didn't threaten loudly. They settled cold and steady in his chest. If you keep digging, the man continued, someone will pick Lily up from school at 3 o'clock. She'll go willingly. She's 7. The call ended. For a moment, the train noise faded. Marcus could only hear his own heartbeat. He called the school immediately. No one picks her up except me. Lock it down. Then he called Detective Kovac. She promised officers at the school. Then he called Rachel. They threatened Lily, he said. Her voice sharpened. Come here now. I'm done, Marcus said. I can't risk her. If you walk away, Rachel replied quietly, they won't stop. You know too much. He hated that she was right. By mid-morning, Lily was brought to Donovan Industries under police escort. She treated it like an adventure, coloring quietly in a side office while adults moved quickly around her. An hour later, Rachel closed her office door. Linda is dead, she said softly. They're calling it suicide. Marcus didn't need to hear more. It wasn't. That afternoon, Lily drew a picture while Marcus reviewed documents. She tugged his sleeve. I saw that man, she said, pointing to a small figure she'd drawn in a suit. The one watching you at the car place. Marcus froze. Watching me? He had gray hair, blue tie, talking on his phone. Rachel stepped closer. Keith. The room felt smaller. He was there to make sure it worked, Marcus said quietly. Rachel's face went pale. They both understood at the same time. Keith hadn't just embezzled money. He had planned to inherit everything. And when the brake sabotage failed, he escalated. Marcus looked at Lily in the next room. This ends tonight, he said. They set the trap quietly. Rachel called Keith and told him she wanted to sign the acquisition papers that night at her house. No lawyers, no delay, just the two of them. Her voice was steady. Marcus listened from the other side of the room. If Keith planned to act, this would be his last chance. At 7:30 that evening, Marcus crouched in Rachel's kitchen while Detective Kovac and her team waited in the garage. Lily was safe at a hotel under police watch. Marcus had checked on her twice before leaving. At 7:58, headlights slid across the living room walls. Keith walked in carrying a briefcase. He looked the same as always, calm, polished, familiar. Rachel greeted him with a softness that almost felt real. The briefcase clicked open. Instead of documents, Keith lifted a handgun. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You and that mechanic forced my hand. There was no shouting, no drama, just the steady voice of someone who had already justified everything. Linda had found the money, he admitted. The acquisition would have exposed it. The partnership agreement would have given him control if Rachel died. You were supposed to die on that highway, he said. Detective Kovac stepped from the hallway. Drop the weapon. For a moment, Marcus thought Keith might fire anyway, but something in his shoulders sagged. The gun hit the floor. It was over. Weeks later, the company closed the acquisition without him. Keith was charged with murder and fraud. The truth came out slowly, piece by piece, like sunlight through blinds. Rachel offered Marcus a permanent position. He accepted with one condition. I walk Lily to school every morning. Rachel smiled. Non-negotiable. They moved into a small 3-bedroom apartment not far from the school. The eviction notices disappeared. The pharmacy bills stopped frightening him. One evening, Lily looked up from her homework. Daddy, she asked, are we rich now? Marcus smiled gently. No, we're just steady. She thought about that. I'm glad you helped that lady, she said, even though it was scary. Me too, he answered. Rachel began coming by for dinner sometimes. Nothing dramatic, just Chinese takeout at the kitchen table, helping Lily with science projects, talking softly about work and life. Months later, Marcus stood on the rooftop of Donovan Industries beside Rachel, looking out over the city lights. Do you ever regret it? She asked, cutting the brake line. He thought about the cell, the threats, the fear in his daughter's eyes. No, he said, because Lily will grow up. Knowing her father didn't look away, Rachel slipped her hand into his. Below them, traffic moved in quiet lines. Somewhere in that city, someone else was facing a hard choice. Marcus knew now that courage didn't always feel heroic. Sometimes it felt like loss, like risk, like stepping into the dark without knowing if you'd come back. But sometimes, when you act for the right reason, life gives you more than you expected. If this story lingered with you, stay near. There's always another quiet truth waiting here in Stories from the Heart.